Welcome to Live.Work.Thrive. I'm Kyla Birmingham, Scary Mommy executive producer, and I will be the moderator for tonight's panel on kids and smartphones. We will be tackling this complex topic from all sides tonight with a panel of experts, including a pediatrician, media experts, and a mom whose house iPhone rules went viral. From Snapchat to Discord to flip phones, we will be decoding many of the issues that are top of mind for parents, especially as the pandemic continues and our kids' ways of learning and socializing have drastically changed. Phones and social media are a huge issue, fraught with ups and downs and, of course, drama. But here, there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. Best we can do as parents is stay informed and focus on what is the best approach for our own family. Specifically, tonight's discussion will cover the benefits to delaying smartphone and social media use, how to know when your child is ready, resources for learning more about unfamiliar apps, and what to consider when creating a digital contract with your child. Let's meet our panelists. Tonight, we have with us Dr. Jenny Radesky, Developmental Behavioral Pediatrician and Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Michigan Medical School. She's based at the University of Michigan Health C.S. Mott Children's Hospital, and her clinical work focuses on developmental and behavioral conditions in low and underserved populations. Dr. Radesky, thank you for joining us back on Live.Work.Thrive.
Yeah, it's good to be here again.
Also with us tonight is Brooke Shannon, founder and executive director of Wait Until 8th. The Wait Until 8th pledge empowers parents to rally together to delay giving children a smartphone until at least 8th grade. She is a national speaker on how to parent in the digital arena and has appeared on the Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and many others. Later on in the show, we will hear from Vicki Saylor from Common Sense Media. Vicki is a senior manager of family and community education for Common Sense, which is the leading source of entertainment and technology recommendations for families and schools since 2003. And also coming up, we will hear from Janell Burley Hofmann, an international author, speaker, and consultant specializing on the topic of technology, media, health, relationships, and well-being. She is well known for the iPhone contract she wrote for her son, Gregory, that went viral. So stay tuned for that one. Before we get started, we have a few quick reminders for the audience. You can submit questions in the comments wherever you're watching, and we may feature your question later on in the show. And join our mailing list so you don't miss any of our virtual events. Visit scarymommy.com/liveworkthrive to sign up and stay in touch. You can also now leave us a voicemail. Yes, totally old school, but the hotline is very hot right now. So call us, tell us what you're struggling with or what topics you'd like to see on the show. Here's the number, 1-800-422-3910. Give us a shout. And hot off the press, we have a dedicated Instagram account. Stay in the know and be the first to find out all the hot tea. Follow us on Instagram at Live.Work.Thrive. Okay, so let's get into tonight's topic. Let's set the stage a little here. Brooke, the average age a child in America gets a smartphone is 10. What direction do you think we are trending in? Is this getting younger or are we getting older with the onset of smartphone use?
I think this is absolutely going to continue to trend younger and younger with the proliferation of smartphones in the country. When my kids were younger, the age to get them was somewhere around 7th or 8th grade. And then that turned into 6th grade. And then it's 5th grade. And then before you know it, when I started the pledge, we had kids as young as 1st and 2nd grade with the hand-me-down iPhone from mom or dad. And so this is just going to keep going down and down unless we as parents put a line in the sand and say, no, we are going to wait as a family.
So Dr. Radesky, let's put this into context because, I love that you two are co-panelists tonight because we have the medical side and we have the parent side of things. And I feel like we all have to work together on this. And if, as a pediatrician, what can you tell us about the normal cognitive development of a brain of a 10-year-old? If we say that, the average age is 10, is a 10-year-old typically good at making decisions and choices?
I think it's all relative, but I always start at birth because I think when you're, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're just starting to have some degree of self-control. You're just starting to have your frontal lobe development. And then we see a nice burst of that in elementary school, but it's by no means ready adult decision-making, impulse control, or even critical thinking by the time you're 10. We think 10-year-olds start to be a little bit more self-reflective. They can think about their thoughts and emotions more. That's why you can start talk therapy closer to 8, 9, or 10, or kids start to care what they look like, but it's really not until the middle school years when kids can be more abstract thinkers. And then the more adult level of decision-making, self-control comes online in your mid to late 20s. So that's when your brain gets this last burst of development of your frontal lobe. And that's why we often see kids having this kind of extended adolescence where they might live at home or not seem to be the best decision makers or have the best judgment until they're really well into their 20s. So in short, like, no, 10 still has so much growth to do. And the problem is that our federal policy with the Child Online Privacy Protection Act declared that 13-year-olds are suddenly an adult when it comes to the internet in terms of giving them a smartphone or letting them use social media. And so I think that's part of the problem is we have this huge disconnect between what kids are ready for and what's available to them in the marketplace or online.
Okay, I want to come back to that federal ruling because that's super alarming. But what Dr. Radesky just said, I think is really compelling. And as a mom, I want to share an image in a second that my own kid's school psychologist, shout out to Judy, if you're watching, she first introduced this to the parents at a meeting, and it really stuck with me. So in just a second, we're going to show an image of the human brain. And as much as all of us moms like to think our kids are advanced for their age and very mature and very responsible, their brains are still, in fact, growing and developing. As Dr. Radesky just said, part of the brain where decisions and executive functions occur isn't even finished growing until their 20s. So let's take a look at this image of the brain where we've got a lot of blue zones later in life. Okay. And then in the early years, when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's all green and yellow and a little bit of red. So as you look at this image and you go across, you can see the drastic difference in the gray matter. So Dr. Radesky, maybe you can just, again, reinforce for us what that gray matter is actually doing as you grow and develop.
Well, the gray matter is getting more organized and more efficient. And it's not, the gray matter is basically your cell bodies of your neurons. So that's where you are storing your memories. That is where all the action is happening within your brain cells. But it's not only that, it's also the connections between brain areas that allow critical thinking, that allow when you have a strong emotion in your amygdala, you don't immediately act on it by moving your muscles and yelling really loud because your frontal lobe communicates to your amygdala and is like, hey, maybe use some of your problem solving skills and like take a deep breath before you do that. So all those connections between your more organized gray matter, your cortex, and especially your like deep brainstem type of what we call the reptile brain that's like all impulses and all just like responding to clickbait. There's a lot more connections that need to be made there. So I think what that image is showing is under the hood of your kid's skull, there's so much important maturation happening there. All of that can be shaped by their experiences, including media experiences, but it also makes them more susceptible to media experiences that they're not ready for, but they like really, really want because they care so much about their peers and all of this gamified fun that's like endless amounts of it that are now available to them.
So Brooke, I want you to tell us more about your organization in a minute, but on this topic, have you seen some of the impacts in your work, of what happens when a brain that is still developing, as Dr. Radesky just described, is handed these highly sophisticated devices or online tools that were created for adults? What are some of the kind of ramifications of this that you're seeing?
Yes, I mean, there's so much research out there around this important topic and the impact that these devices are having on kids. I mean, I was just reading the other day about how kids who are on these devices, they're not having those more moments of just being bored and daydreaming and letting their brain wander. And when that happens in your brain, there's a part of your brain that's called the default mode network that activates, and it's really important. It helps you process the past, it helps you think about the future, it helps you problem solve. But instead of having those moments of boredom to process all that information in your brain, kids that are getting smartphones very early in life are making that their default mode. So whenever there's a moment on the bus, they pick up the phone. When they're waiting on mom, they pick up the phone. When there's a moment in school, they pick up the phone. And it's this constant go-to where they're never having down moments in their brains. And that has ramifications in so many different areas of their lives.
Yes, that is true. And I see that even with my own kids. They don't have their own phones, but they're allowed to do texting, which can be equally as addictive. So it's like before they would come home and like flop down on their bed and, do whatever. And now it's like, oh, I have 5 minutes. I'm going to check the group chat. And it's like a constant addiction. So Dr. Radesky, we have new apps every month. We have technology changes. The new model of the phone is, always seems like a month away. But the design of a kid is the same, right? The kid needs the same fundamental things to be a healthy, thriving kid that pediatricians and the scientists have known for decades. So I feel like we've lost sight of this a little bit. And some of these core needs start to erode with some of these unhealthy habits that we allow to kind of seep in, maybe unintentionally or without noticing. Can you speak to some of the behaviors or, I guess, impacts of these devices that can start to erode some of the basic core needs that kids have? I mean, I can think of sleep as one of those, but maybe you can elaborate on what health considerations we should be thinking about with the level of access we have to these devices for kids.
Yeah, well, so let's start thinking about this, from the ages of like preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, because that's the time when we want parents to be thinking ahead and trying to set down some healthy habits, that it's easier when you have that tween or teen who's interested in a device to even have the conversations or have some of the norms already laid down, that they'll accept some of those limits or have some of these tougher conversations with them. So I think the other important thing is that it's not just the device, it is the attention economy that is the business model of so many of those apps and games and streaming video sites in the device. That is what I think is the most difficult for kids to resist, because it's not just autoplay and a tailored recommendation feed that's trying to predict what your kid wants to click on next. It's also all of these little design nudges and interactive design features that just know they've been tested to see what gets kids to come back again and again or to watch longer. So this could be things like the sort of gamification that's in mobile games where like, oh, if you just play one more level, you'll get this special gift, this special, dragon that I know you've been wanting. And a lot of it is tailored based on what they know about the child's gameplay, in the past. Oh, this kid really stays up late, so let's keep offering them these little treats, right at 10 p.m. So it's not a fair fight, right? You have this developing brain that can't really recognize when a game is trying to persuade them to play longer. You have this like delicious candy of fun and videos and games in front of them. And so what my research has shown is we see kids on their devices. These are 3 and 4-year-olds watching YouTube or playing mobile games into the night. We see that these apps are on their devices being used at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So one of the first things would be if your child does have their own tablet or their own device, have some really clear boundaries of when that thing goes to sleep as your child is going to sleep. Not in the bedroom. Look at the apps that they're playing and see which ones of these are actually filled with like manipulative design tricks that are trying to suck my child back in, and uninstall those. Because I just think we do need to draw a line on like how far an app is willing to try to pressure our kids to make purchases or keep playing. This happened with me and my older son with FIFA Mobile, where I was like, no. They're not going to get you to come back and like wager on something tomorrow just at 11 a.m. Like, no, that's called a dark pattern within digital design. And then it's not just sleep. So when the app is trying to get your attention so much that it's trying to like colonize all those little parts of your day that you'd otherwise be bored or just having some chit chat in the car, it's elbowing out social skills building opportunities. It's elbowing out the emotion regulation that comes from, oh, I'm bored. Like, I just don't feel good. I wonder what's up with me. Let me like dig into, my thoughts a little bit and try and figure out why I'm feeling so grumpy. These are really important social emotional skills that if your time is always colonized by ping, 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 oh, I want to go back to that thing that's so fun and pleasurable. It's just harder to learn those skills, especially kids where it doesn't come as easy to them. Say if they have autism, ADHD, anxiety, or other difficulties.
Yes, this is so true. And I really wish we would have had this talk 5 years ago, because I feel like the kids who are now the teens and tweens are like that, like generation that lost all of the awareness because it wasn't really something that was talked about at all. So Brooke, let's talk about that. You saw some elements of this innocence lost happening around you, and you decided to do something about it and founded Wait Until 8. Tell us about why you started this organization and how the pledge works.
Well, I started the organization because my kids, like all kids across the country, were asking me for a smartphone at very young ages. Like I had a third grader, a second grader, and a preschooler at the time, and they already had friends with the latest gadgets in their hands. And they were constantly asking, when am I going to get a smartphone? And I just kept telling them not yet. And then one day I was driving past our local middle school where my girls would one day go, where they are now. And what I saw were all these kids just streaming out of class, heads down, nobody talking, everybody completely captivated by their online world. And it just made me sad to think that my kids would be there one day and either they'd be the only ones with their heads up or their heads would be down looking at a smartphone. And so from that, I emailed some parents in our school district to see if anybody else had hesitations about giving phones so early. And there were so many parents out there that said that they wanted to wait, but what they heard from other parents is that it just gets to be hard because it feels like everybody has them, and nobody wants their kid to be left out. Nobody wants their kid not to be invited somewhere because they didn't get the message. And so there was this like community pressure to have these devices at a young age, and the pledge came about to help parents out of that sticky situation. Like, what if there was peer pressure not to have a phone? What if there were some other friends waiting with you? Would that help you wait until longer? And what we found is yes, if you just, even if it's just a handful of friends that you have that are waiting with you, it makes that waiting game so much easier. And it makes your community stronger if you're linking arms with other parents on this important issue.
It's so true. We did the pledge when my kids were in grade 3 and 4. And it worked for like a year. We'll talk to how the pledge fell apart later, but it wasn't the pledge. It was the people. But I do think this is a really, really great tool. And it's so simple for anyone who's hoping to slow down the onset of smartphones in their kids' school. Visit waituntil8.org. I'm going to put the pledge up on the screen now. And it's essentially just a promise to not give your child a smartphone until at least 8th grade. And for you to work together with, like Brooke said, link arms with 10 other families from your child's grade who also take the pledge. And that's it. And the pledge is just for smartphones. So if you want your child to have a basic phone that just calls and texts or, another device that's not a full-fledged computer, you can also sign the pledge. So I think this is a great tool for folks. And you can also take this and modify it. At my kids' school, we sort of tweaked it because what we were seeing was a playground and birthday parties were turning into like a bonanza of everyone on the phone. So we added to our pledge, commit to keeping screen-free birthday parties and playground time. And I think that was really important for kids in 3rd grade, especially in New York City, where not everybody has a backyard to run around in. The playground is a really key place for kids to just be kids and have fun. And I think that, that worked. I think we got 87% of parents in the class or the grade to sign up. So it was a good, at least moment to get everyone talking about it. Of course, there was some who were not impressed, but that's fine. There is a question from the audience that I want to just throw out to you, Brooke. Is there any way to see if schools in my area are doing the Wait Until 8th pledge? is there a way you can kind of see who's listed, or is it confidential?
So you can email us. Our email is on our website, which is just waituntil8th.org. And if you're curious if there's an active pledge at your school, you can email us and we can look it up and let you know. We don't release people's names just because of our privacy policy. But if you're part of an active pledge in that situation, you would know the other families who are waiting with you in that situation. And that helps just facilitate great conversations with your kids. Like, we're waiting, and so is Johnny and Sam and Tim, et cetera. But yes, you can absolutely email us to check to see if you have a Wait Until 8th pledge at your school. And the great news about it is that it's so easy to start if you don't have one. It just simply starts with you sending out an email to some of your friends, or perhaps having a coffee and talking through some of the resources that we have on our website. And I will say that families who have taken the pledge, what we keep hearing across the board is that it just slows down the train. It not only slows down the train on smartphones, but it helps you delay social media longer. Once you cross that smartphone bridge, then all the other questions and asks start as well. When can I get Snapchat? When can I get Instagram? When can I get TikTok? And by kicking this can down the road a little bit further, you're delaying all that, and you're giving your kids these precious moments of childhood, of just being kids, playing outside, reading, being bored, exploring, and just enjoying being a kid without the distractions of the smartphone.
And it really is, something that you might feel a little nervous about raising at first. If, you might be thinking, oh, are we the only ones? Am I going to be that crazy mom out there who's like beating on the drum? You're looking at her. But in fact, you will find overwhelmingly, and at least in our situation, a lot of parents were like, thank you for doing this, because I'm getting the same question, and you need a leg to stand on. And you can say, hey, listen, 9 out of 10 families in your grade are on board. So this is the rule, and that's how we're going to roll with this. And so are all your friends. So enough is enough. And that's it. No one's excluded. You're all in it together. I think that is a great out for parents, for sure.
And another, just quickly, another way to approach it, this is what happened in our grade in 5th grade last year. We were all virtual. And so we were all dealing with all these like drama over Gmail chat. We were finding kids just like spending too much time on YouTube. And there was like, basically we were going through this huge experiment of what it felt like when we all gave our kids internet connected devices. So it started as just an email exchange amongst parents in the same classroom, like, what should we do about this? And Wait Until 8th was a resource that we could use to at least have some discussion guides. Like, we all met over Zoom and just decided, like, what are we most worried about? The families who said, I really want to have some way to contact my child, it was great to look on the Wait Until 8th website to realize there are models of phones that don't have social media apps or internet connection. And actually, compared to last winter, when I just looked again today, there's like 8 new models of phones compared to where there were before. So I actually think that this movement is forcing the tech companies a little bit to realize, or maybe some new startups that are saying there's a market for this mid-range type of device that's giving a developmentally appropriate amount of communication or connection between family members, but isn't just like opening the entire Pandora's box of the internet to kids. And that was my point about the like 13 being this legal age when kids can be offered anything on the internet, short of pornography. But it's because it's when data collection and behavioral advertising was deemed okay, and social media was deemed okay. So there just wasn't a lot of attention from tech companies to make it a teen-friendly experience on those sites. They basically got whatever adults were getting. And now there's definitely more pressure for there to be a little bit more developmentally appropriate from social media sites or other platforms. But I'm so glad to see it in the phones and actual devices themselves, because that's the kids' entry point into this huge, very unregulated digital space.
Yes, definitely check out the list of those phones. I agree. Yes. You have that on your site, Brooke. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yes,
there.
that's what I was going to say, because that is one thing that we hear from parents. Like, I need to be able to get in touch with my kid at a certain point, whether it's sports or you're in New York City and they're riding the subway. And so parents sometimes think that, okay, well, I need to get in touch with my kid. Let's go from 0 to 60 and get the smartphone. It's easy. I have my old iPhone. I'll hand that over. But there are some great tech-wise options out there. And if you go to our website, waituntil8.org, under the devices tab, we have them listed there for you, and we compare them and you can see what they offer. But it is a completely different experience giving your child a phone that doesn't have an internet browser, that does not have access to an app store, that does not have social media, that does not have games, compared to a fully loaded iPhone that you're going to have to manage. It's a completely different situation. And so I just really urge parents, if you are at that fork in the road where you feel like you need to get in touch with your child, consider a basic phone before the iPhone or whatever smartphone it may be.
Bring back the flip phone, people. It's cool again. Okay. The older ones, now that like the older college kids are even going back to the flip phone, because really, I think it also teaches kids what the purpose of a phone actually is, like was intended for. And it's a communication tool. And at that age, you just need it to say, Mom, pick me up from soccer. You don't need a camera and a shopping trip and all of these other things. It's not sexy by any means, but what ends up happening is, and I'll speak from experience, they're embarrassed to pull out the non-iPhone. And what they do, they use it for what it's supposed to be used for. They call you really fast and then they put it away. Magic, because they don't want to be seen with this, non-Apple product, but that's what the thing is for. So anyway, I will stop now. But I wanted to ask Dr. Radesky, like in our case, we did the pledge. I think it was in grade 4, but by 6th grade, a lot of the kids had a phone. So it starts to, people start to disband. Is there a magic age when you think kids are ready, or does it depend on the kid? What signs can a parent look for to know when they're ready?
Yeah, there's definitely no magic age, for a couple of reasons. Like, first of all, until we had these more age appropriate models of phones, we basically were like, hey, what is the right age to give my child keys to a sports car? It was like you immediately had access to so much stuff, go really, really fast. You weren't really sure where they were going to drive to and explore. You'd probably be like figuring it out afterwards, after there had been an accident or something more problematic. So that's why there was so much angst around this question, because people were like, I don't want to give them this adult appropriate device yet. So regardless of whether it's a smartphone or one of these, flip phone, basic phones, the basic things I want parents to think about is, who is your child? And also, who are you as a parent, right? Are you, someone who wants that GPS so you can see where your child is all the time? Or would you prefer to some parents have a little bit more of a risky play approach where they're like, I actually want my child to have to navigate our neighborhood without having this crutch of, always being able to ping me. Those are some of the relationship dynamics you should think about. But for kids, impulse control. Is your child someone who is just going to dive down a rabbit hole, or, post pictures of themselves and not even think about it? And I'll tell you, my 8-year-old son yesterday, he was homesick because we had COVID in our house, and he basically built a website on Wix that would have published our home address. And I was on the phone with my mom, and he's just like, hey mom, look at the website I built. And I was like, you're not getting a smartphone until I'm absolutely sure, because I know you're a hacker and a spammer. And then there are other kids who are super sensible, lots of self-control. You probably could tell that they were the 4-year-old who was like, oh, here's the tablet. Yeah, you can have it back. So if you have a child who's always had a pretty balanced relationship with tech, they do their chores, they're not constantly negotiating with you for extra amounts of video game time. Their relationship with tech based on how much they've argued with you about other devices in your household. Have they been sneaking it? Do they kind of hide it or lie about what they've gotten into? Or do you have a pretty open communication where you could be like, I found that in your room. What were you watching? Can you tell me about that? And I think that's one thing, is if you have a child who you think is pretty immature, maybe is socially anxious, is pretty impulsive, might wander into creepy territory, I would wait. Maybe start off with a flip phone or something pretty basic, and then have an ongoing conversation with them to say, like, we're going to test out your responsibility level. Like, here's your new mission, is to try to take care of this phone, show that you're not going to be texting like rude words to friends, and also ask the child, what do you think should be the signs that you're ready for like the next step up? And it's got to be this ongoing conversation and experiment, and you're going to have to debug and figure it out as you go. But I definitely think if parents are feeling like, I hate even letting them open up a browser because I don't know where they're going to go, have a little bit more, put your foot on the brake and really talk to your child about the fact that right now it's so easy to wander into creepy territory on the internet. If you have a really responsible child, then you still would want to be setting up like higher privacy settings so that people, kind of strangers and marketers, kind of can't contact them, and have a really important conversations about social media. Like, what are you ready for? Are we going to set it up together? I want you to show me, what you're seeing and what you're posting. Same thing with social gaming. Talk to me about what you're seeing, and let me, come to me if you're seeing creepy stuff, bullying stuff, shocking or toxic stuff, because, kids are going to need a lot of mentoring as they enter a space that's still not fully developmentally appropriate for them.
For sure. And I think too, on the safety piece, the kids need to understand that maybe one day the phone's going to be dead, or the reception is not going to be there. And they need to know how to figure out life without a phone on the day when the thing doesn't work. I actually experienced this when my daughter got lost. We had a mix up with the babysitter. Babysitter was at one Starbucks. She was waiting at the other Starbucks. I was in the ER with my other daughter. So it was like, she was like, what? I get a text from the babysitter. She's not here. I've been waiting 30 minutes. And I was like panicked because this is, after dark in New York City. I basically lost my child, and she didn't have a phone. And, that was the moment I was like, oh, I should have gotten her a phone. This is all my preaching coming back to haunt me. And what did she do? She walked around. She found a apartment lobby with a doorman. She asked the doorman to use the phone, and she called me. And I was like, oh, common sense. Wow, amazing. And then thinking about it, I was like, well, I'd rather her be looking around and alert at night rather than like face down in a phone screen, which, could potentially have been worse. So I think, when we think about safety, we really need to encourage ourselves to think about, what does safety mean and what does safety look like? Because that phone is not the thing that's going to make them safer necessarily, right? So
right, absolutely.
In a minute, we're going to hear from a mom who became famous for the digital contract she wrote for her son when she was giving him his first iPhone. Her name is Janell Burley Hofmann, and she wrote this digital contract. And I want to read a few points from it because it's some of the things that you both have said, but it's really well done. And this has kind of since then become the model for what a lot of parents like to use. The first one is, it's my phone. I bought it. I pay for it. I am loaning it to you. Aren't I the greatest? Key point the kids need to understand. Unless your child has a job, you're probably paying for it. I will always know the password. Another thing I think everyone should instill. If it rings, answer it. It is a phone. Say hello. Use your manners. Do not ever ignore a phone call if the screen says mom or dad. Not ever. I love that rule. If it falls into the toilet, smashes on the ground, or vanishes into thin air, you are responsible for the replacement costs or repairs. Mow a lawn, babysit, stash some birthday money. It will happen. You should be prepared. Do not use this technology to lie, fool, or deceive another human being. Be a good friend first, or stay the hell out of the crossfire. Number 10 is great. No porn. Search the web for information you would openly share with me. If you have a question about anything, ask a person, preferably me or your father. And I've skipped over a few, but these are just the highlights. The last one is, you will mess up. I will take away your phone. We will sit down and talk about it. We will start over again. You and I, we are always learning. I am on your team. We are in this together. So if you want to hear the full pledge, and since then she's written several other templates that you can borrow, visit janellburleyhoffman.com. But now let's hear from Janell herself, who has for the past 10 years become a media expert and international speaker on this topic. Here's what she has to say about where to begin with your own digital contract.
So for me, if families don't know where to start, or they're worried about, making too many rules and now they have to manage and monitor them in a way that they don't have the energy for right now, or doesn't feel realistic, I would say choose just 2 or 3 non-negotiable tech rules. Some tech rules that are rooted in what's important to you as a person, what's important to you in your relationships, and set those boundaries. So a few examples of that would be sleep, right? I think something that's non-negotiable is consistent and uninterrupted sleep for our children and our adolescents, because there's so much science to support that. How we treat other people, right? Not that we won't make mistakes or say something and have to apologize or rethink like, oh, I thought that was going to be funny, but I was misunderstood online. That's going to happen. But the non-negotiable for me is, how do we treat other people and what is our intention behind that treatment? Again, taking a little bit of time and reflecting on, we might have some fluid tech rules, but what are some of our non-negotiable tech rules based on who we are? And then how do we build from there? It's never too late to redesign what we already have. And that we can always come back to the drawing board and say, I'm thinking about sleep, or I'm thinking about just the amount of time spent on screens, and I want to have a conversation about that. So it's never too late, and we can build contracts for lots of things. And it's like a muscle. We get better at it the more we develop those skills.
So I think this is such a great approach where, it's an evolution. It's not going to look the same on day one of letting your kid use the device. And all of these apps and the way kids are using them is constantly evolving. So you've got to stay up on top of it as a parent, right? So one of the things I've been noticing as a parent is that sports are something that my kids do a lot of, but the devices have crept into the sports teams, whether it's at practice, in the change room, at the game, after the game, before the game. And I feel like it's kind of robbing a little bit of what, sports do for kids. Dr. Radesky, what do you think about this kind of blending of the digital world with the physical in terms of sports teams?
It gets tricky because I know there are some sports teams where they communicate over the app, or they are keeping stats on their players, or they're sending training videos or other things. But I have really appreciated how my 12-year-old soccer coach, laid it out right off the bat. No phones, no devices. I want your head in the game. I don't want it on what's happening on Twitter, or, what Ronaldo's doing, or other things that are going to be distractions. And I really appreciate that, because I recommend sports involvement as a really natural, motivating way to learn social skills, not just winning, losing, teammate, but you have to be monitoring what everyone else is doing. It's a super dynamic situation to read other kids' social cues and then adjust your behavior to really meet what they're doing. And if you are not paying full attention to that because, you are checking notifications or something, you're missing out on that benefit. So I just think coaches could do so much to help set the cultural norm that there's boundaries around, bringing tech to the game. If they want it to be something fun, taking videos of winning or playing music, there are other ways to do that, or it could be assigned to one kid who has an MP3 player, or, something to find some creative solutions.
So Brooke, what do you think about, the soccer team signing the pledge, or a form of their own pledge? Would that be something that could work?
And I think that's a great idea. And I agree with both of you all. I think that coaches do need to be leaders on this. We need to create spaces where kids can be physical and active and not have the distractions of the smartphones. And too many sports, this is happening. You go to any swim meet and kids are on their phones. You go to any school event right now for sports related, and 99% of the kids are on their phone on the way to the game and back from the game. So if schools and coaches were to be leaders on this, I think it would make a huge difference on how kids are using devices when they're active in their sports. And that would have so many great positive ramifications for our kids.
It also takes the pressure off the mean mom. Okay.
Absolutely.
The kids love the coaches.
Yes.
They'll love the mom all the time. So please, any coaches out there listening, take the
Kids
pledge.
love coaches. And if you look at just in that recent scenario too, kids love heroes too. And so when the Georgia quarterback came out and said that they just won the national championship, that he basically gave up his smartphone last summer so he could focus on his sport, that his head could be in the game, that he could focus on school and the sport. And because of all of that, that helped him be where he is today in his sport. So I think it's also important as parents that we point out those examples to our kids and say, look at what this guy did. He is excelling as a sport. And this was part of his strategy, really.
This is so true. And now I want to hear from a cheerleading coach who saw rising number of kids using their phones during practice and competition and decided to make her own phone policy for the team. Here she is.
Hi, my name is Stacy Shawkowski, and I'm a head cheerleading coach for a college and high school in New Jersey. I wanted to share a few of our phone policies and social media policies. When you enter the practice gym, every athlete's phone is to be put on silent and away in the bag. While at practice, we ask for the athletes to be present and engaged at the task at hand. If there's an emergency, we make sure the phones are accessible to each athlete, and we have our phones on us as coaches as well. We're a bit more strict when it comes to competition. They're allowed to have their phone on them during the bus and preparation time leading up to the competition. A half hour before warm-ups, the phone must go in airplane mode and can only be used for music. Then, 10 minutes before warm-ups, phones are to be put in their bags and they cannot use them until after their performance. Coaches always have their phones on them in case of an emergency, so we are always accessible to any parent or guardian. As for social media, we have policies that we follow to make sure we keep our athletes safe, as well as following the policies from each school. And of course, as you know, in high school and college, there is phone policies we follow as well.
So what I like about what this coach is saying is it's nothing crazy, right? We're letting them use the phone on the bus. We're letting them use it for music. We're letting them have common sense, access to the thing, but then there's specific articulated moments when it goes away. And that's it. And it's probably as simple as an email that goes out to the team and to the parents. And so everyone's on the same page and we're done with it. I would love to invite all the teams out there. Let's see how many teams can take the pledge or some form of it. Let's do it, people. Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So I want to get to those in a minute. But one thing that we have to talk about is the questions from parents. And I hear this all the time. I don't understand Snapchat. I don't understand Discord. What goes on? How can I monitor my kid if I don't even know how to use these tools? So Brooke, what would you say to this parent who's like, not super into technology and they want to monitor their kid, but they don't know where to start?
I would tell them to, first of all, start slowly. If they're starting to roll out social media, don't give that kid Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok all at once. They need to learn, both the parent and the child, how to navigate that one platform at a time before they layer on other social media apps. So start slowly. Look at what experts are saying through the app ratings. If you look at Common Sense Media, if you look at Protect Young Eyes, these are both great resources. Parents can go and read a quick guide on Snapchat, a quick guide on Discord, a quick guide on YouTube or whatever the app may be. But I really encourage parents to check out what experts have said. They've done your homework for them and put parental controls in place. If your kid is on social media, not only do you need to start slowly, you also need to limit how much time they're using it. It's not a good idea to have like a blank check on this. You need to put good safeguards in place. And maybe it's starting off with just 15 minutes a day. You don't want to just let them on it for hours upon hours, because what we can see in the research is the more time they spend on it, that is when you see problems as far as body image issues, anxiety, depression, etc.
I think what I'd add to that is that actually one of the best ways you can find out about what these sites mean to your kids is to let them show you around, is to have that sort of open conversation with them about, all right, we're starting TikTok, let's look at it together. I'm going to start an account too. Let's do an experiment. Let's see what it's feeding us. Let's be really critical about the garbage that's showing up in our feed. And let's actually be pretty, inspired by anything funny or great that's showing up. And when you're showing that, what that mom had said about we're learning this together, it shows a humility and an open-mindedness that I think will really help kids feel like they can come and talk to you about these things. I've started different accounts just to explore what these interfaces look like and how much they are trying to, suggest, oh, post this, filter this, try this, comment on this. Because there's been studies that show that even just if you're looking at the interface, the screen of TikTok, of Snapchat, of Instagram, there's all of these cues popping up and being like, come on, do more, share more, take a picture. Don't you want to caption this? So they're having kids fabricate this more content. The more content kids fabricate, the more social media sites make money because it's generating more views and more engagement from the social networks. So when you're talking about kids wanting to check their phones on the bus, wanting to, check it when they're at sports practice and stuff, partly that is generated by the companies wanting more and more engagement. They're like, hey, all your friends have created all these funny memes and all these things, a lot based on nudges from the companies themselves. So you want to help teach kids, okay, that thing is nudging you to share, comment, whatever. You don't have to. You can just ignore it. Try and be a little bit incognito and see if they can predict what you actually like. Teach them to be a little bit smarter than the algorithm. And also know that they may want to resist some of that monetization, meaning that their attention and their activity is being, someone's making money off of it. They may want to resist that a little bit by saying I don't need to be on this all the time because that's actually just fulfilling the business model of that company. It's not actually what's going to make me better friends with this person. If you have a kid who's actually into that sort of oh, I'm being watched or I'm being monetized, have them listen to, we actually did an interview with Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, who gave us a really incredible explanation of how Instagram feeds kids information that can lead you down a really dangerous path really quickly, and how Instagram knows that they're doing this. It's been proven. So it's up on scarymommy.com/Live.Work.Thrive. Have your kids watch that video. A few teachers that I know have shared that, and the kids were just blown away. They're like, whoa, I'm not letting anyone do that to me. Let them into that conversation. But I also want to give it a second here to one of the organizations Brooke mentioned, and that is Common Sense Media. They are a fabulous resource for parents. You can literally go to their site, Google Discord, if you're trying to learn more about it. They have videos, they have reviews, they have ratings from both parents and kids on apps, films, movies. Thank you for helping me not watch Bad Santa with my family at Christmas. It's not a family movie at all. So let's hear now from Vicki Saylor from Common Sense Media, who is going to tell us a little more about the resources that they offer. Here she is.
Another resource you can find at Common Sense is a texting program that we offer. It is a free texting application, and it's called Tech Balance. And parents can sign up by texting the word kids to 21555 in English, or the word familia to the same number, 21555. They'll receive bite-sized pieces of advice and tips on how to keep kids safe, including on how to have those early discussions on what media and tech use is going to look like in their family. If parents are interested in finding out more information regarding video game apps and just the way that kids are using it nowadays, I would highly suggest that they go to our website and just look for that keyword, and then numerous articles and videos will come up. Again, a lot of parents don't realize that video games are a form of social media. So we always recommend that parents check those privacy settings and those parental controls and make sure that it aligns with their family values. A lot of these gaming apps have the capability to have chat features. So if, your family decides that that's not something that your kids want to, that you want your kids to participate in, make sure that you discuss this with your kids and then also adjust those parental settings.
So I think she makes a really good point there about video games, and that I think sometimes we think Facebook, Snapchat, we think of all the big kind of tech companies, but we don't always think about video games because there are so many of them, and many of them have these social features that can allow your kid who's 5 to talk to a stranger in Arizona in a dark basement, for example. So, Dr. Radesky, what should parents think about with respect to video games and, kind of how do you keep a handle on what's allowed and how they download? And I mean, I feel like every mom I know has been in a conversation and the kid's like, can I have your credit card to download such and such a thing? How do you manage this all?
I think reading reviews beforehand as much as you can is really helpful, because Common Sense Media is really honest about which ones are really just trying to promote in-app purchases, which ones have good role models, too much violence, things like that. So the other thing is, like, say they want to play Roblox or something that seems benign enough, but you really should read the Roblox website where it says for parents, so that you know the different safety settings that you can enable. Make sure that on setup, you are giving the accurate child age, because responsible companies are setting those filters by default. And then don't play the age inappropriate games. So like a 5-year-old playing Fortnite, they're really not tailoring for the age of the child the same way that Minecraft or Roblox are. Mobile apps that are like really easy to download out of an ad or out of the app store, I have a lot more distrust for a lot of them, just because my research has shown they collect a lot of data, they show lots of ads, they pressure for in-app purchases. So read your reviews, often the ones that you have to pay something for, like Monument Valley is like one of my kids' favorites. It's just this like, nerdy, calm puzzle game. But those are more the ones that are going to be worth your kids' time and attention than something that just is the first thing to pop up in the app store. And then you have to talk about the rules of who are you allowed to chat with, why we're not enabling chat, that there are some, creepy people out there that want to talk with kids, and finding ways that if you are able to enable it so it's just them and a few buddies on a server or something like that, that's been a really important source of social connection during the pandemic. But it's got to be continuously monitored to make sure it's staying secure.
That is such a good point. So we have a few questions from the audience coming in here. So Brooke, this one's for you. If you don't have success with a wait until 8 pledge and every one of your kids' friends has a phone, how do you handle the social isolation of not giving your kid a phone?
So I think there's a couple of different ways you could approach it. If your child's in, let's say, middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, and all of their friends have phones, one nice on-ramp to having a personal device would be to have some type of tablet at home where they can use iMessage and FaceTime and connect in your home in a shared space for a certain period of time of the day. That gives them connection to their peers. They can get an Apple ID and connect with their friends by texting and FaceTime alone. That's one option to consider. And that has actually worked for a lot of families that we've talked with, because the kids are able to connect socially, but yet there's very clear boundaries as far as when and where that device can be used, because it's tied to the house, if that makes sense. If you are going to give a phone because you feel like you're at a spot where your child is ready and they are the only one without one, I again encourage considering a basic phone, or if you do want to do an iPhone, to strip it down. And what do I mean by that? I mean, take off the internet browser and the parental controls, take off the access to the app store. That can also be done in parental controls. You can set a curfew on the phone. You can put a time limit on the phone. You can make sure social media is not on the phone. Just because you give your kid a phone doesn't mean you have to put all those bells and whistles on it. Start slowly. And as they demonstrate maturity and as they get older, they can earn privileges to be added to the phone. But at the beginning, really start slowly. Don't have that browser, don't have the app store.
So, okay, Brooke. So I'm going to now think of 90% of the moms I know, no offense, but doing all those things that you just said is not necessarily something a lot of us know how to do, just like pick up the phone and turn off the this and then strip all the things. Can I go to the Genius bar and be like, Chad, delete everything on here for me? Will they do that? Or is it something that you've got a tutorial for folks to do?
I'm going to make it a little easier for you. Right now, after we're done with this, you can go to waittill8th.org. And one of our recent blog posts is basically how to save your child from his iPhone. And we give you step-by-step instructions on how to strip it down. It will take you less than 5 minutes. It's super easy and something that you can absolutely do.
Thank you, Brooke. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So useful. So useful. And I
Yes.
don't want to go to see Chad at the Genius Bar because it's going to make me wait for 2 hours.
Yeah, skip that step.
Okay, so we're getting a couple questions here that I think are really important. Dr. Radesky, this sounds like it might be up your alley with respect to the pandemic and the fact that our kids' screen time has dramatically increased. A lot of parents are saying here in the comments that they've struggled scaling back because, suddenly the kids who were using pen and paper all got a Chromebook and all the lessons are on the computer. And, as a parent, it's hard to always tell, are they actually doing their math or are they drifting over to Netflix or whatever? Then secondarily, another person is asking, kids are making plans on the phone now, not in person. How do we ensure the social well-being by avoiding the phone? So maybe you could just speak to both the social piece and the school piece and how that pandemic is changing the way they're acting.
Yeah. Well, so first question about, what are kids now doing on their Chromebooks or other devices that, I've dealt with it myself with my 8 and 12-year-olds, is that like when the device is charging in their room, we have found Securely, which is like the monitoring software that our school district uses. So we get reports of like, your son did a Google search for this term at 4 a.m. So like we get some of that data about what he's searching for and what time of day. So that can be helpful if you have some sort of like, monitoring software, Net Nanny, something else like that. It shouldn't be the only thing you rely on. It should be a conversation starter. So I can be like, hey, Thomas, how did you sleep last night? Like, what are you searching for? Number two is, so we just changed it so that they're only using those devices in common areas because it was really hard not to just dive into rabbit holes. And that's, something that I think is a really reasonable rule to have. You can get a little distracted. You can look up soccer statistics sometimes, but it can't be this endless rabbit hole of information binging or, just entertainment. The issue around when so much of the social life has migrated to online and like, how do you get it back? Part of that is hard to answer right now just because of the Omicron surge. So there's still plenty of sports teams, clubs, swim lessons, lots of other in-person stuff that's available now. You may just need to encourage your kids a little bit harder to go back out, branch into in-person types of activities. Whether it's a new skill, a new dance class, something that's basically creating a structure for them of facilitated social interactions. They'll find that a lot easier than us being like, just go hang out, go find your friends and bike around town. When kids are anxious about something or are out of practice, they need a little structure and facilitation. So you as a parent, don't dive in and try to make a play date for them if that's not appropriate for their age range, but do something that kind of scaffolds them a little bit and helps, hey, we're going to go out to the movies, or we're going to, so-and-so's in a play. Like, let's get everyone out. Let's dress up. Let's all kind of like get out there and be in person together and realize it's not so hard. I also want to say though, like there's a lot of social skills that still happen online. They're of a slightly different sort. They're harder to read. They are often with misunderstandings. But we want kids to know, like, we know you're still hanging out when you're online with your friends, but it's of a different type. So we just want you to be able to get a mix of both types because both are going to be needed, even in a world where there's metaverses or whatever might be happening in 20 years when our kids are grown-ups. So, that is part of the, try to see what they're motivated to be willing to do, without it being through screens or through media.
Thank you. That is good advice. So unfortunately, we are almost out of time. I feel like we could have talked a full other hour about all of this stuff because it's so critical, but I encourage everyone to visit the resources that we've mentioned, and we're going to post those online as well for anyone who wants to follow up and take that next step. I also want to let you know that our next episode of Live.Work.Thrive will be on February 15th, and it will be on microaggressions and how to do better. Anti-racist work is ongoing, and it starts with us. Please join us for this important topic. You can sign up at scarymommy.com/live.work.thrive. Also, call us on our hotline. You know, I love a hotline. Give us your questions, your suggestions, your feedback. And here is the number, 1-800-422-3910. So thank you to both of our incredible panelists, Dr. Jenny Radesky, Developmental Behavioral Pediatrician and Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Michigan Medical School. She's based at the University of Michigan Health CS Mott Children's Hospital. And we look forward to some upcoming research from Jenny on this topic of media and children. Brooke Shannon, founder and executive director of Wait Until 8th. Visit waituntil8th.org to take the pledge, to delay the smartphone, to figure out how to strip down all the things that you don't understand from that phone. It's all there. Brooke, a big thank you on behalf of all the moms out there for being a leader and really, you know, helping us all take back a little bit of childhood. We really do appreciate all the work that you do for our kids.
Thank you.
And also thank you to Common Sense Media for being a great resource for parents. Don't forget to check out commonsensemedia.org to search for ratings or reviews on apps and games and all the things that we need a little tutorial on. And of course, Janell Burley Hofmann, her site has a whole list of digital contract templates. I encourage everyone to take a look and see if there's something that's a fit for your own situation. Have a great night, Scary Mommies. Childhood is short. The smartphone and social media learning curve is long. So stay informed, slow down, and be the one they come to when things don't go as planned. With you and your child on the same team, they will live, work, and thrive. Good night, everyone.